and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please place your hand over your heart and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. City Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Councilmember Holstedge.
Here.
Councilmember Middleton.
Present.
Councilmember Roberts.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Kors.
Here.
Mayor Moon.
Here.
All councils present.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight, and I'm glad to see we got a good turnout for this study session. Councilmember Kors and I have been on this ad hoc committee for some time, and it's been a very complex process, and we decided that it was really important for our fellow council members to really get an in-depth understanding of what the process has been, and also for the public. Because a lot of times the procurement process for government organizations like the city is very complicated. And there's a lot of rules that a lot of people that are just in regular business were not familiar with. In fact, we're not familiar with all of them. So we want to make sure people understand the contracting rules and the processes we go through in this, and understand that some people may think there's not some transparency in certain areas, but that's because it may appear that way, but that's the way the procurement process is structured. So, also we felt that this needed quite a bit of discussion, so we felt it was not the right thing to do on a city council evening because it might take up the entire meeting. So here we are. So what we're going to do tonight, which is a little different than what we do in a regular meeting, is we're going to have the staff report first, and that will be followed by public comments, and then we'll have the council have discussion on it. That way the public can hear what the facts are before they make their comments. So Dr. Reddy, do you want to take it from there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. What we'd like to do is just give you a brief presentation. I think what's important is to brief you on the process that we went through and why. And first and foremost, I would note that the reason that we went out for a RFP this time is this contract had never been bid in probably 30 years. Back in the 90s when the city chose to privatize the convention center, LMI is the company that they contracted with. Ultimately, they were purchased and bought out by SMG. SMG took over the contract, and when the contract came up, it's been almost 15 years ago now, the city council at that time chose to, and the stakeholders, to continue on. And so, we've had a good relationship with SMG, and so the decision now to go out into the marketplace on an RFP is because it's been so long, and just as a matter of good public policy, we felt we should do it. But again, it was no reflection on the performance of the SMG. That being said, I would like to just explain to you the process we used. And so for that, Craig Ladders, our procurement director, and also the consultant who helped us, Mr. John Katz from CSL. They have a brief presentation, and then we'll be happy to address your questions. Okay, with that, Craig?
Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the community. I'm Craig Ladders. I'm the Procurement and Contracting Manager for the City of Palm Springs, and we have followed a very stringent, very formal process for this, which meets industry standards nationwide for the solicitation of these types of services, and engaged a professional firm to assist us. Back on June 7th of 2018, the formal RFP document was actually posted, distributed, and made available to the public, and also advertised. In that RFP process, we used specific criteria for the evaluation. That was for the management plan of the convention center, the strength of the general manager and the team that was to be proposed, the experience and qualifications of the firms, the corporate management support that the city would receive from the firms, the sales and marketing approach to both the convention center and the Bureau of Tourism, their creativity and their organizational coordination, and environmental sustainability in the operations of the center itself. In this industry, there basically are 4 leaders in the United States that do this. They are AEG, SMG, Spectra Venue, and Venue Works. Certainly anyone that's qualified was welcome to participate and to submit a proposal, but those are the 4 key firms in the country that do this. We reached out to all 4 of them. Spectra declined to propose. They had actually were deep in the process with obtaining the contract for the Dallas Convention Center, which is a very large convention center, and were not interested in participating in our process. And Venue Works declined to participate. So with that, we held a mandatory pre-proposal conference, which was held at the convention center. We did that on July 18th of last year, and AEG and SMG both attended and met the mandatory requirement for attendance. During that process, the firms were given an opportunity to ask us questions, get clarification. We had to issue 6 addenda answering 26 questions throughout that process to be responsive to their questions and wanting to make clarifications about what we were looking for. 2 proposals were received by the August 15th deadline. We received a proposal from SMG and one from AEG. The Evaluation Committee meeting, the first meeting, was held on August 28th, 2018. At this meeting, it was an overview of the formal process of the requirements, the execution of conflict of interest forms, the distribution of the formal materials, the evaluation forms, and how the scoring methodology works in a process like this. Mr. Katz attended that meeting to give us guidance from the industry of how to do a formal process like this, since, like David said, we hadn't done this in approximately 30 years. On September 19th, the Evaluation Committee reconvened, and at that point, they actually discussed and scored and provided their scores for the written submittals that they had received. They were quite extensive, very large documents. They independently, each individually, evaluated those and scored those based on the criteria that I had mentioned earlier. With that, the Evaluation Committee, and I should be noted, the Evaluation Committee in a formal RFP process in a government does not include elected officials. Elected officials are the ultimate deciders, and they are the people who vote on the contract. So the Evaluation Committee members itself who help the city in evaluation process are appointed by the city manager. The Evaluation Committee opted to have on-site presentations and formal interviews with both firms. So we held those interviews on October 30th. After some deliberation for a couple of weeks, the Evaluation Committee then reconvened, and from that process and the combination of both the written submittals as well as their interviews and presentations, they recommended that we, the city, should enter into contract negotiations with AEG. The council subcommittee, Coors and Moon, and the city manager and the Evaluation Committee all got together and held second on-site interviews with both firms on January 29th of this year. In a turn of events that was unexpected and no one here could have predicted it, the city was notified shortly thereafter on February 7th that the very 2 firms that had submitted are merging into one. That is in process now. It is expected to take approximately 8 months, and the new entity of the combined firms will be called ASM Global. And here we are today. That's the process of where we are. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Katz, who will talk about, in general, the submittals that we received.
Mayor, council members.
Hold on. Off.
Sorry about that. Mayor, council members, that was a very good summary of the process. I represent Convention Sports and Leisure. We're a firm that does this kind of analysis and provides this kind of assistance to cities and authorities all across the country. My recent experience includes convention center management process in Hawaii and Detroit and Chicago and a variety of other markets. So as Craig mentioned, it is a very limited pool of potential respondents. You did receive 2 firms from 2 submittals from 2 very qualified firms, which we were happy to see. In submitting their written documents, both firms did address each of the key criteria related to operations, management, sales and marketing experience, corporate support, and other areas. In other words, they checked all the boxes in terms of the kind of information that you've requested from them in order to perform the evaluation. We do note that both firms are expected to retain, or would be expected to retain, the majority of the convention center and the Bureau of Tourism staff. We note that both firms have represented that they will retain the current catering vendor. We also, personally, CSL has not been involved in rating or scoring. We don't have an opinion on the firms, but we do note in looking at the proposals and the oral interviews that SMG has noted their past operational, financial, room night success in their presentations, their national experience and their sales support, their willingness to continue to align with the CVB and other stakeholders and continue to improve and modify the sales and marketing process. AEG noted extensive experience in the Valley, obviously with Golden Voice and their ability to produce events. The goal of significant event increases that they've stated in their submittals, and also their nearby corporate and marketing support presence with a headquarters in Los Angeles. They felt they could introduce those support mechanisms very easily. I know it's a real brief encapsulation of hundreds of pages of documents and dozens of hours of interviews, but that's kind of where we stand right now in terms of the big picture in terms of the submittals.
That completes our portion. I would turn it over to the city manager at this point.
Thank you, Craig. Council, I would just note in the staff report has a little bit more detail on the process. And I think at this point, after you have public comments, the consultant obviously is here and we can answer any in-depth, detailed questions that you have. Public comment, Mayor. Yes.
Okay, with that, we will open the floor for public comments. We get up to the right screen. Okay. Right now we have 12 in queue. Just a minute. David, I'm sorry. We should have discussed this before the meeting started. Are there certain parties that will be speaking for longer than 2 minutes?
Well, as I recall, Mayor, because this was a special meeting, you were going to potentially give the stakeholders of the small hotel shops, I believe, a longer period to address, and certainly council can, at your discretion.
Yeah, I think the thought was to give a little bit longer for stakeholders, the president or head of an organization, and I think shops was the main one we talked about. So, if they want longer, and we could.
We have, if I may, Mr. Mayor, we have only 12 people. I mean, as long as people don't filibuster, I think it might be appropriate to still set the time, but allow people to continue a little bit longer if you'd like. What do you think?
I think it's always good to have a time limit. Right. We can change it to 3 or 5.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to do? 5?
Why don't you do 3? I mean, 5, we're going to be at an hour of comments before discussion, and we can call people up for if we have questions.
So
Let's
3?
start with 3 and see what
Okay.
we got.
So we'll this is a study session, so it's not our normal, we don't have our normal rules that we go by. We have more flexibility. So we'll set the timer at 3 minutes. So right now we have 14 people in queue. The first one is Tom Adamo, then Kenneth White, and then Bill Sanderson.
Business owner, 40 years Palm Springs resident. Mayor, council members, staff, I commend you for the outstanding job you're doing for our city, our beautiful city. I'm not trying to offend anyone in saying when you are dealing with a budget line item such as the convention center, if you don't have the expertise to handle it, the best thing to do is put it in the experts' hands. Mayor, council members, Dr. David Reddy, I commend you for forming the evaluation committee. And the members bring to the table 50-plus years of business and City of Palm Springs knowledge. You got to admit, that's a very powerful committee. They together did their research and put together the evaluation plan and submitted to you, Mayor, council members, and Dr. David Reddy. All I ask that you support the committee evaluation. I also suggest you keep that committee active because with all their knowledge and talent, they cover all the bases and they could hit a lot of home runs for our city. Mayor Moon, thank you for your military service. When you served as commander in the U.S. Navy, you would rely upon best information, best data from your experts to support your decision. The people who served under you, the U.S. Navy, were counting on you to make the right decision. In this case, it's the business owners and the City of Palm Springs that are counting on you to make the right decision. With that said, Mayor, council members, Dr. David Reddy, I ask you again, support the Evaluation Committee report. The city really got a gift using that committee. They used their talent, they used their knowledge, and it was all for $0. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Adamo. Our next speaker is Kenneth White, then Bill Sanderson, then Lisa Vossler-Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for allowing me to come up and speak. I'm not from Palm Springs, but I've been in the Valley for 29 years. I have a lot of experience with AEG through the Golden Voice. I work for Marca Broadcasting. We have 5 radio stations, and most of you probably know that we do a lot of promotion with Golden Voice. I'm not a big company fan usually, but I've been very impressed in the 14 years that I've been involved with what they do and how they do it. They're very, very organized. They have huge support staff. Their resources are almost unmatchable. And I think that their quality of the work they do and the way they do it, how they treat their people, and how they make things work for the whole valley is an impressive thing. And I think that they've done it for about 14, 15 years now with both Coachella and Stagecoach. Stagecoach is in its 13th year. Coachella, I believe, is in its 12th or 14th. I'm not even sure, but it's been around a long time. And they do a good job. They make a lot of money. They know how to run a business, and I think that they would be a big plus for the convention center. I think they would bring things into this town that we don't normally see because they have that outreach. They have the fingers all over the country, have a lot of experience. They run a lot of big convention-type places, major league ballparks, basketball stadiums, they have concert business. So I'm impressed with them, and I just wanted to show up tonight and say that I think that they'd be a good addition to the city of Palm Springs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Next speaker is Bill Sanderson, then Lisa Vossler-Smith, and Kathy DeRosa.
Good evening, Council, City staff. I'm a board member of the Designated Tourism Guild, and I'd just like to have no flaw in the process as it's been presented. My comment is on the evaluation committee, how it was selected. Where are the small business owners on that committee? Where are the minority business owners of Palm Springs on that committee? It seems that the same players are always drawn upon, but we have a wealth of other business owners that would like to participate, but we may or may not know when this happens. As far as the SMG staff of tourism, I've worked with them. They are phenomenal. I would like to say that they are 100% dedicated to Palm Springs only, and I repeat that, Palm Springs only in their decision process when they're working. So I hope we can maintain that core of people somehow in the future. And in closing, as you are the historic first LGBTQ council, I just hope you're wrestling with the CEO's past discretions in his contributions to charities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. The next speaker is Lisa Vossler-Smith, then Kathy DeRosa, then Michael Green.
Hello. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Thank you for having us. I'm Lisa Vossler-Smith, Executive Director of Modernism Week. I'm here today in support of AEG's proposal with William Kopelk, Modernism Week Chairman of the Board as well. We've had a very good working relationship and production partnership with Golden Voice for the past 6 years, and we've worked successfully with several AEG-managed teams. During that time, they've helped us grow our business approximately 20 to 30% each year. They've brought a level of expertise to Modernism Week that we did not previously have. Their professionalism and innovation has helped us reach a higher standard. AEG has already been a great partner in the Coachella Valley with their amazing success with the festivals and support of Modernism Week and other local nonprofit organizations. We are certain if they take over management of the Convention Center and Bureau of Tourism, they will bring incredible resources to bear, resources that only they can bring. They have been great citizens in the Valley. I'm confident we will only see more of that directly benefiting the city of Palm Springs when they begin management. Everything I've seen with them indicates that it's just in their DNA to support and give back to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vossler-Smith. Next speaker is Kathy DeRosa, then Michael Green, then Mark Hunter.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Kathy DeRosa. I reside in Cathedral City, and I stand before you today as the former chair of CVB and as one of the community leaders that chose to keep the community jail out of the city of Palm Springs and also work to hire Scott White. I'm here to speak with you today in regards to this management change that, from my perspective, makes no sense at this time. The two companies are merging, and quite frankly, Mr. Luca writes very good statements for people to get up here and read. With all due respect, Chris, I love you to pieces, but that's how it is. And Mr. White has been very openly critical of the city of Palm Springs and the Convention Center. His goal is to combine CVB marketing into the Palm Springs marketing and to make your Palm Springs Tourism Bureau, quite frankly, obsolete. He is working with the city of Indian Wells currently to do their marketing program for them. Mr. Dada, who has been a significant contributor and very powerful in the CVB, and Aftab, you and I have worked together on many issues, thank you. But Mr. Dada is also in the position right now where he is working with AEG at his property. Is that not a conflict of interest for him? The events that are being held there are being booked through the AEG ticketing site, and quite frankly, that to me just leads to a lot of questions as to his viability on this particular selection committee. Also, as we stated earlier, many in your own community, in your tourism community, your small hotels, were not a part of this process. At this moment in time, these two companies are merging. Business and politics don't work. This is very, very ugly politics, and this is personal. Quite frankly, I suggest that I ask you respectfully to put this on pause. Let the two companies merge. Take a look at your options then. There's no reason why you can't step back and make any change necessary at that point in time. But right now, the conflicts involved, the conflicts vested here tonight, and in your selection committee has tainted your process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Good evening and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. Next speaker is Michael Green, then Mark Hunter, then Doug Watson.
Hi, my name is Michael Green. I didn't get the message, so you'll hear my comments in 2 minutes. As I think all of you know, I've been troubled by the process of the Convention Center review. When I found out about it in August, I asked why it was happening, because we've been given glowing reports on the bookings and the occupancy at the Convention Center. So with that good performance, I didn't know what was going on. I was told it was being done for the sake of transparency and because the contract had not been put out to bid for a long time. Later, when I found out who was on the evaluation committee, I asked why it was so limited. Since in every other instance I've seen in the last 20 years, similar committees have included much larger and more diverse groups of stakeholders. I myself, along with several other people who are in this audience this evening, were asked to sit on the committees that recommended renewing SMG's contract in 2003, renewing it in 2008, recommended hiring Mary Jo Ginther, and recommended hiring Jamie Canfield. So why the change in 2019? The answer I was given was that this only concerned the convention center contract. Now, I might have accepted that answer, but later, when I saw the video interviews and got a copy of the questions on the RFP, it was clear to me that this was not the case. And I want to read you an example of one of the questions that was asked. It says, your proposal references the past opposition to moving Palm Springs marketing to the CVB. If key stakeholders, and I'd like to know who those are, were open to this model, would you see such a model as working to the benefit of Palm Springs and the entire destination? There were several questions like that in the process. Now, to me, that does not sound like we were only talking about the convention center contract. So I asked about that as well. And I was told that that may have been true, but it didn't matter because the selection committee was not recommending any changes to the city's brand marketing or to the Bureau of Tourism. To me, though, it does matter because the company that is managing the Bureau of Tourism will in fact be directing their efforts, and they will be the caretaker of the city's brand. If they don't believe that the city's brand is important to stay in the city, and they don't believe that the Bureau of Tourism is important, then they're not going to be strong in that area. I don't know how AEG feels about that. A lot of stakeholders depend on the marketing efforts of the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism, large and small businesses. That's why I believe this process was flawed and that a number of us in the tourism community were completely disenfranchised from it by not being included. I also believe a broader and more diverse group of stakeholders might have come to you with a different recommendation. I respectfully ask that you consider that before making a decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Our next speaker is Mark Hunter, then Doug Watson, then John Shea.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Mark Hunter. I am on the board of the Desert Gate Tourism Guild. I'm also on the board of this Palm Springs Small Hotel TBID Improvement District and a business owner as well. My big concern is also with how the evaluation committee was selected. All of the members, sans one, are on the same board with Scott White and the CVB. They do not represent the diversification of the city. They do not have any of the other major stakeholders represented, and I think that is a major concern. Thankfully, this hasn't been voted on, and I think the process can be started over correctly, and we can stop that. I also realize that we cannot, as a city, make decisions based upon necessarily our political views, but we also have to realize the truth in the fact that social media is out there and our tourism relies on our reputation. Just last weekend at Coachella, former Congressman Aaron Schock was seen at Coachella with other city officials from the city of West Hollywood. There was as much shock as the former congressman reversing on his past voting record as there was city members of the West Hollywood attending Coachella because of the negative reputation of AAG. I wish us to please keep that in mind because our city has that reputation of being a very open city to everybody, and that company does not have that reputation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Our next speaker is Doug Watson, then John Shea, then Jenny McLean.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Doug Watson. I'm here representing Evolution Hospitality here in the desert. We represent the Riviera Hotel in Palm Springs, which I'm lucky enough to lead every day, the Doubletree Hilton Golf Resort in Cathedral City, and then the boutique hotel called the Paseo Hotel in Palm Desert. I'm here this evening to stand in support of AEG as an organization. With the consolidation of SMG and AEG, it certainly makes an experienced and very powerful collection of talent, all of which should and will benefit the city and the surrounding communities. In my past experience, I was given the opportunity to not only reinvent convention centers through a litany of cities, as well as being exposed at length to the leadership of AEG. I spent 38 years with Marriott and Ritz-Carlton, was in charge of Southern California and 2/3 of the United States for Ritz-Carlton, and was exposed to convention centers in every major city throughout the United States. My experience with AEG was formed over more than 5 years of development and execution of the LA Live project. The project was driven by the vision of AEG, in which entertainment, retail, dining, and hospitality came together with a massive undertaking by the city of Los Angeles. During that time, AEG demonstrated the vertical nature of creating a vision that labor unions, business communities, and citizens would share in the longer view of the project. They created a master plan to improve the entire community of downtown LA. My role at that time was to represent the brands of Ritz-Carlton and with the JW Marriott to ensure that our brands would be accurately represented in one of the gateway cities of the world. The AEG teams positioned the proper way to work through all of the nuances of that development, which was painful on many fronts. We had different agendas in those days. My job was to represent the brands. Their job was to develop the city. We learned a great deal together, and I think that's the underlying issue that I'm trying to bring forward. I've never gone to a meeting, and I went to a meeting once a week for 5 years, every month, with AEG, with the president of their organization and their teams, and they were never ill-prepared. You know, the wonderful thing about great organizations is that they know when to hold on tight and when not to hold on too tight, to let the creative process move unencumbered. And as long as that people didn't hold on too tight to a personal situation, the project would evolve. The common denominator of AEG in those days was that they knew they were trying to develop a part of Los Angeles, which was very difficult. And in our business, selling against Los Angeles was a very easy process in those days. So when we decided to put big projects in the ground in Los Angeles, we had to do it together. I think the thing that we take from that forward here is that the unseen measure of success is what is yet to be defined. And as you think about organizations you want to do business with and the people you want to stand next to, those who help you think through the creative process of problem solving, equaling innovation in whatever fashion that takes, as these two organizations come together will only benefit the city. But AEG has a provocative and proven record of being able to demonstrate a creative process that others have not, in my experience. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Our next speaker is John Shea, then Jenny McLean, then Steve Boswell.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is John Shea, and I'm Chief Operating Officer for Lulu California Bistro and the Vice President of Palm Springs Hospitality Association. 2.5 years ago, as Chairman of the Palm Springs Police Officers Memorial Foundation, Palm Springs experienced one of its darkest days in our 80-plus years history. On October 8, 2016, Palm Springs Police Officer Gil Vega and Leslie Zerevny were killed in the line of duty. As you might be aware, the trial for the individual accused of their murder is currently underway in India. I'm sure few of you in the audience tonight is aware of AEG's response to this tragedy in our community. Without hesitation, fanfare, or press, a subsidiary of AEG donated $100,000 to support the families of our fallen heroes. I hope AEG is not upset with my revelation of their generous support, which violates our agreement of confidentiality. But I believe it is important to share how committed AEG is to our community. For 2 decades, AEG has been an important part of our tourism economy. AEG has been responsible for Coachella, Stagecoach, and Desert Trip. They are also involved with Splash House and are perennial supporters of Desert X and Modernism, each an important attraction for our tourism economy. Based on their past and present commitments, we can be certain that AEG will continue to be among Palm Springs' strongest supporters if they are selected to the operators of the Convention Center and the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism. And in light of our somber day that we experienced today, I did ask a member of AEG why they do what they do without the fanfare. And this is the same response that we've heard today at the memorial from our matriarch, Barbara Keller. Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Next speaker is Jenny McLean, then Steve Boswell, then Peggy Trott.
Good evening, council, staff. My name is Jenny McLean. I've been a resident of Palm Springs for 36 years now. Many of you know me from our business, McLean Company, but some of you also know me as Splash Mom. And Splash Mom is an investor and with the family in Splash House. And after the first year, we were approached by AEG, at that time Golden Voice. And I have to tell you, our experience for the last 6 years has been incredible. They have supported us like a family. I've had the pleasure of going to their facilities downtown. They treat their staff like family. Now, I'm not saying that I know all the details of everything that's been going on here, but somebody said earlier tonight that you were surprised by what happened when the two joined together. Maybe we'll be surprised by what happens when we allow this contract to continue. I can't imagine AEG and their team not putting 100% into the success of this contract. I've seen them in action. I've seen how they treat everyone. And I also have a heart for everyone who currently is with our convention center. I mean, I know them personally. But how do we know what the future is until we give it a try? Now, I also have listened very carefully to maybe what we could have done better in the selection committee. Maybe we could have, but that's the past. Nobody other than these two stepped up to even make a bid, am I correct? And they're the best, two of the best in the country, and they're willing to work together. Isn't that an amazing opportunity for us to take advantage of? To see if possibly the promotion and the tools and the ability that they have working together wouldn't give us the advantage. Are they doing this in any other community? Is this team putting together in any other community or just Palm Springs? For all over. So what is the question other than not having the best committee put together that some of the people are questioning? I don't understand. I came tonight to understand a little bit more about the actual contract and what the hesitation was and the process, and I was informed pretty well, so I appreciate that. But I am 100% in moving forward and giving an opportunity to this new team to benefit our community. So thank you very much. I didn't come, I would like to be as articulate as some of our speakers, but I came to speak from my heart. And I can tell you, they have treated us incredibly. And so I hope they will do that for all of us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McLean. Next speaker is Steve Boswell, then Peggy Trott, and then Jeffrey Bernstein.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm here this evening to voice my support for the AEG as operator of the Palm Springs Convention Center. I worked with AEG downtown Los Angeles in the 90s as Director of Sales of the Bonaventure Hotel. As you all know, during the 90s was the darkest days of the City of Angels. Those that know LA's history will remember that the challenges that faces that city. A broken convention center, riots, and very little hotel inventory. I observed AEG work with a very tough council, supervisor, and with the Honorable Mayor Richard Riordan. They did bring his vision. They never gave up. As LA, our destination, as LA did, our destination has evolved and our hotels have improved. More than ever before, it's imperative we book groups and that we have greatest impact to our destination. I'm not here to degrade SMG, but I did work with them in Long Beach while opening the Sheraton Long Beach. Please be assured, I will tell you that SMG is no AEG. I have friends that work for both companies, and if we were to take tonight an employee survey, I know who would come on top with employee satisfaction. During the interviews, I was disappointed with the unprofessional attacks on AEG by SMG. AEG demonstrated a much higher level of professionalism, and I feel that they can evaluate our destination to a higher level. AEG proved that they understand the uniqueness of our destination and can create new creative and innovative strategies. SMG did not provide any new or unique strategies. I only heard SMG that they were the biggest and they were the best choice. I was very impressed with the selection committee and hope the council would take note of the amount of years combined and that of the members that agree to make the change. If we have an organization like AEG leading the effort, I feel much more confident that we will reach the long-term goals and the entire tourism community will benefit from their leadership. I encourage you to make the right choice, choose AEG, and invest in our future. We need your leadership on this important decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell. Our next speaker is Peggy Trott, then Jeffrey Bernstein, and then Joy Brown Meredith.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here tonight as the general manager of the Colony Palms Hotel, as well as the future general manager of the Rowan Kimpton property. After listening to the remarks from the evaluation committee, I certainly support their recommendation for AEG. Being a newer member of the hospitality industry in Palm Springs, I do believe AEG is the company that will lead us into the future, as they have the experiences, resources, and support to grow the tourism market. I did take into the account the merger of the two companies, and I believe it would be best to choose the company leading the merger to lead us into the future. I truly believe that it is AEG, and I hope that you will take into account all of the experience of the evaluation committee. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Trott. Next speaker is Jeffrey Bernstein, then Joy Brown Meredith, and Robert Imber.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Moon, City Council, staff, and thank you for hosting this meeting. I do want to just reiterate a couple comments that people had on the evaluation committee, which I have great respect for everybody that was on it, but I feel that it was flawed in the sense that you didn't have any locally owned businesses on the committee. And while there's no locally owned business that will have the same impact on the convention center as a large hotel, as a group, the small hotels, small businesses, small restaurants do. So it is likely that SMG and AEG will merge, and I actually think that could be a great thing in terms of what they bring to the city. But what I would ask is that you talk to people about what SMG has done for locally owned businesses, both with the Bureau of Tourism and the Convention Center. I know from my experience that's been tremendous. I will also say that AEG, particularly through Modernism Week and Splash House, has been great for locally owned businesses. They may not have worked with them all directly, but it has a great impact. So the reason I'm here today is to say that if this contract is going through, that you stress the importance of whoever is awarded the contract to ensure that they support the local economy and locally owned businesses, that they're hiring local vendors, that they're hiring local people there to work there, because the Convention Center and the Bureau of Tourism has a tremendous impact on the whole city itself. And I think Entrance Entertainment Group, they only have one convention center. They could also learn from some of this experience that SMG has had in supporting local economies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Next is Joy Brown Meredith, then Robert Ember, then Quentin Eggson.
Hi, my name is Joy Brown Meredith, and I just wanted to say that this has been a very complicated process for sure. But really the issue that I had, and I have the utmost respect with the people on the selection committee. However, it should have been broader, in my opinion. There should have been others on it, and I realize, as Jenny said too, this is already in the past, but I think that this has to be a giant lesson to be learned here, that should have been broader. I also just want to tell you that it has certainly been an honor and a very rewarding experience to work with SMG. Their caring about the small businesses as well as the large has been very great for us and has helped so many businesses prosper. And I do have some concern in regards to the discussions of possibly diluting our brand by sharing it throughout the whole Coachella Valley. And I think that it's something that's very important for me as owning some small businesses here, that you know, we really want to be able to maintain that, and we really need that for ourselves. You know, when John Raymond left for a while and he came back, I said, John, tell me wisdom that you might have gleaned from outside of Palm Springs. What's the most important thing that you learned? And he said, the most important thing is that you will always be Palm Springs here, and nobody could ever take that from you, whether you're in good times or bad. And that really struck me, that that is what makes us special. And I know that other cities would like to be Palm Springs, but they can't. So I just really want to say, though, that I think that SMG has done a wonderful job for us from a small business perspective. I'm not a big hotel, so I don't know a lot of things, and I do admit that. But I just wanted you to know from my heart that how important they have been for a small business to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Next speaker is Robert Ember, then Quentin Eggson, then Felipe Castaneda.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members and staff. I must emphatically support Mr. Green and Joy Brown Meredith. The business owners, really the truly neglected and oversighted and excluded business owners in this selection process of the evaluation committee. We are Palm Springs, and all of the accolades, and I've made a list of adjectives that AEG offers, are inarguable. You know, it's like electing a president of the United States who's an incredible businessman in the world. But the truth is, it's the branding, it's Palm Springs. SMG, I retired from my 20-year architectural tour business. I've worked with SMG, I've worked with our Bureau of Tourism since Mary Jo came on board, and even beforehand. And they've been phenomenal in outreach and in developing what we need for our city, and in bringing opportunities and groups to our city. My tours were not just daily tours driving around a half a dozen people in my minivan and waving to all of you, basically. But my tours also were the Smithsonian Institution and international organizations and architectural organizations and international museum organizations, groups both at and not at the convention center, groups where I would take buses of 20 or 50 when 200 and 300 people came to town. And so through SMG, through our Bureau of Tourism, through their dedication, they have brought opportunity that is unseen to the convention center and to our tourism and to the numbers of people who come here. But the main point I really want to make is that I think the unseen opportunities that small businesses bring. I am a trustee, emeritus trustee of the California Preservation Foundation, California's largest preservation foundation and education and advocacy group. I, 10 years ago, was instrumental in bringing them to the Hilton Hotel. They are arriving for their annual conference, our annual conference, on May 8th through 11th. You could probably tell me, but 650 people will be coming to town, staying at the Hilton with all the sessions and programs that aren't at the Annenberg or aren't at Sunnylands, aren't elsewhere. I'm doing 8 tours, organizing 8 tours. 650 people are coming to Palm Springs. They're not at the convention center, but it's 650 statewide professionals who are coming here. And it's as close to me as if I were doing it myself, but with the help, obviously, of hundreds of other people and the California Preservation Foundation organization that has, again, chosen Palm Springs and bringing onwards and above of 650 people to the Hilton Hotel and to Palm Springs. These are unseen facts. These are unseen numbers. So I want to stress that point. Mayor Moon, in an earlier meeting on this topic recently, you said it was, I think you said it was, the Bureau of Tourism may be elephant in the room. And I responded by saying, not so much an elephant in the room, but this whole topic is, with the unknowns, good or bad, or potentially bad, is the tip of an iceberg. So I advise you to be cautious and to set aside, as people have said, any specific decision and in any way, fashion, or form separate out our Bureau of Tourism with some kind of certainty and guarantee that we're being told verbally exists, but there's nothing to back that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ember. Next speaker is Quentin Egson, then Felipe Castaneda, then David Powell. And right now, Mr. Powell is our last speaker. If anyone else wishes to speak, please put a card in to Mr. Mejia, the city clerk, at this time.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and staff. My name is Quentin Exon. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Coachella Valley. And I work with Boys and Girls Clubs throughout the whole valley, Cathedral City, Palm Springs. We all share the same mission, the same mindset. And our goal is to help youth and families reach their goal. And we want to do our part in improving the qualities of lives for youth and families throughout the Coachella Valley. And I think A&G shares our same mindset. AEG reached out to us to indicate their mission. AEG reached out to us to indicate their willingness to work with us and push our mission forward right when they submitted their RFP to the convention center. I was impressed with their willingness to get involved with the community and other communities as well, like in LA. As I talk to my counterparts in LA, they really speak highly of the impact that AEG makes immediately when they come into a community. On our first meeting, we didn't just sit around and do the usual get to know you. We talked about some tangible things that they can do to help push our mission forward and to make the community better. You know, frankly, I can't wait till A&G comes to town and they can help us, Boys and Girls Club, push our mission forward to make the lives better for the youth and families of the Coachella Valley. So with that, I stand here endorsing A&G. Thank you for that time.
Thank you, Mr. Egson. Our next speaker is Felipe Castaneda, and then David Powell.
Good evening. My name is Felipe Castaneda, 34-year-old, no, wait a minute. 34 years in business in Palm Springs as a restaurateur and a hotelier as of 8 years ago. And all politics aside, it all boils down to profits for the merchants of the city and taxes for the council, for the administration to service the city as a whole and the merchants. And if some part of those merchants are not considered when it comes to decisions that pertain to the whole city, then I don't think you have the whole information, all the information needed to make decisions. I will put a question to you. Do you think all events drop money in the city of Palm Springs? And I'll tell you, not equally. Some do, some don't, some do not. Is there a study that has been made about it? I don't know. But I think that if we, as small merchants, are invited to the table, we could cooperate with information that may help you serve better the city and the citizens. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castaneda. Our last speaker will be David Powell.
Good evening, I'm David Powell. I'm the Executive Director of the Desert Business Association, the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Most of my comments are on process, as I've discussed in a couple of meetings. Frankly, first, I thought this was going to be a study session versus on issues specifically processed, raising the issues in ways that the issues can be resolved to the satisfaction of everyone, and not testimonials for one side or the other. It also appears that people believe, and I'm not sure if there's a decision being made tonight. It makes it appear that people are believing a decision on which way it's going to go, AEG or SMG or neither, is being done. Some information I would have liked to have heard was a little bit of a deeper of a staff report, because it was just basically the cursory overview that we've heard before. But there definitely appears to be a problem with the process, which the city's acknowledged. Small hospitality businesses and small businesses in general were excluded in the process when it was noted that one leader was sent a letter of support toward one applicant. He was then excluded, as was the entire small business community. City has an opportunity to step back and remain objective. I've sat in meetings where the small hospitality owners and operators were basically discounted and at times talked down to by an evaluation committee member. This is not a way to bring everyone together. Learning today of some potential conflicts with an evaluation committee, within the evaluation committee, and some communicated as perceived bias towards one group or another should be reviewed and acted upon appropriately. AEG has done some very nice things in our community, apparently, and so has SMG. I do not have a bias towards either group. We all want what's best for our community, our city, and our region. I would suggest council take another step back, determine the best course for our convention center and the Bureau of Tourism. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. Mr. Mejia, do we have any other people who wishes to speak? Okay, anyone else? Okay, that will close the public comments. Does staff like to make some comments based after the public comments?
Mr. Mayor, I think it might be helpful if I explain the evaluation committee. So the initial committee, and again, this was my putting this together. The initial committee was merely the convention hotels in a process that was going to have a lot of input from a lot of stakeholders. So the initial review, when we chose, it was the Ace Hotel, the Hilton Hotel, the Rowan, the CVB, and I wanted to have someone from staff on, so I asked Marcus, the Assistant City Manager, to join. That was the initial review only, and there was never any intent truly to exclude anyone. So we had the initial review to give just a recommendation to the subcommittee, which was obviously the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Kors. Once that subcommittee received a recommendation, that's all merely it was. In my mind, and I believe in the mind of the committee, they were then going to reach out to other stakeholders and get input. And as a matter of fact, even with the recommendation of the evaluation committee, they weren't convinced. They actually asked to interview both companies again, which we did. That being said, shops then, I think Michael Green and the shops board indicated that they had concern about the process. And we listened to that. As a matter of fact, we went to their meetings, the subcommittee and myself, and we listened to the group. We heard their concerns, and that's why we're here today. The subcommittee committed to make sure that council was going to hear everyone's comments, and that was the way it was always intended. But I would just note that I've been at this for a long time with this group of stakeholders, and I think there's not anyone there who doesn't know that we've always wanted to be inclusive. As a matter of fact, it's been over 10 years since we created the Program and Budget Joint Committee, which basically gave all the decision-making for the marketing for our Tourism Bureau to the stakeholders. So we've been working with them for a long time, so certainly there was no intent to exclude. That being said, if I had it to do over again, I certainly would have, for this initial review, included everyone. So that obviously was my error. So that being said, we're here this evening in making sure everyone is heard, but that gives you a little insight as to how that initial committee was put together and why we are here this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeff, I think maybe you and I can make some comments before we start with the rest of the council, because we worked with this on a long time, and actually, Jeff will speak for himself, but I know after the reason we asked for the additional interview of both companies and also to speak with the shops and other people was because I was really, when I would listen to these interviews and I watched those tapes, each one was 3 hours long. I watched them twice, and I couldn't make up my mind. And one day I'd be like, well, you know, SMG's done a great job. We should probably stick with them, and the Bureau of Tourism does a great job. But then AEG had so many things that was positive for them, and AEG only has 2 or 3 convention centers where SMG has 78. But, you know, suddenly this merger thing came up. And so this changed the whole perspective, in my mind anyway. And because, so now we had an opportunity to have a company that has a lot of convention center businesses combined with a company that has a lot of stadiums, shows, et cetera. And I want to clarify one thing. It's not in the staff report, but when I read the articles on the proposed merger, I believe that the stadium management portion of AEG and, of course, SMG will combine into the new company, but the Golden Voice portion will be in a separate company. Is that correct? It's not a total merger of all of AEG and SMG. I didn't hear that.
I don't know the exact answer to that, Mayor.
Pardon?
I don't know the exact answer to that. Craig, do you know?
I believe you're correct, Mayor. I think it's a merger of AEG facilities and SMG convention centers. Golden Voice is not directly part of that merger.
Right, that wasn't in the staff report, and I think that's just...
I believe you're correct.
That's an irrelevant fact. I just want to make that clear. And also, when we had the discussions with AEG, they made it very clear that with a few exceptions, they did plan to keep all the employees, as many as possible, from the current SMG people working at the convention center to ensure continuity. There would be a change of the manager, but most of the staff would remain the same. And also they would be keeping Savory's there, which was a very important thing to very many people. So those were factors that I thought were very important. But so I think it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, when it was going to be SMG or AEG, I didn't know. I was vacillating back and forth, and I think I would have wanted to have maybe an expanded selection committee look at this and advise us some more. But with this merger, it changes, as I said, it changes the whole thing. I think probably we're getting the best of both worlds with the merger. But one thing that's bothered me, and I think I've heard several people mention it, is I think I've learned over the past 3.5 years the CVB does an amazing job of advertising our entire Coachella Valley and the greater Palm Springs area. However, as several people said, Palm Springs does have a unique brand, and I think it's very important to keep that unique brand, and therefore I think it's very important for people that we keep our own Bureau of Tourism for Palm Springs. There was a lot of discussion during the meetings that there's been some overlap and some lack of coordination between CVB and the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism, but that could be worked on and that could be fixed. So we could get more bang for our bucks that we put into our convention and visitors, we put into our Bureau of Tourism by reducing the redundancy. And I think that could work very well. But I think one thing that I'm concerned with, and a lot of people are concerned with, is if we agree to that right now, that we will continue that as it is, even if it's in a contract over a period of year, 2, 3 years, that could very well change, and the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism would gradually be merged into the CVB. And I think that's what a lot of people are concerned about. So one thing I wish we could discuss is a way to try to ensure that we do keep our unique Bureau of Tourism as long as we wish to, and that we have those 2 separate organizations, both advertising Palm Springs, but one specializing on Palm Springs. Jeff, comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Follow up on that a little bit, because as the subcommittee, we've had the opportunity to talk, but not with the rest of our colleagues. We have obviously talked with a number of the stakeholders, and we had a stakeholders meeting to get additional input. But on the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism, regardless of which company it is, that's 100% funded by the city. We make the decision what happens there. And sure, any council could change that in the future, and whichever company people are employed by doesn't impact that. It's actually a city decision. The only reason it works the way it does now, where they're employees of SMG, is because the city required that as part of the contract, because when you add in all the government costs and the government pensions and everything else, we take 40% of the budget that we now use to market would actually go to all those other costs. So that's our request. We were very clear with both companies that, and they were both clear that the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism would say exactly as it is, with the exact same leadership and the exact same staff. Some people suggested we do have them work for us, but there's a cost reason that doesn't make sense. But that's going to stay as is. That's really is a benefit for the city that one of these companies people will be their employees of those companies, but everything else is up to the city. So that's entirely a city thing, and I know the mayor and I are committed, and we'll talk about that tonight, of the strongest language we can in the contract that makes it clear that those calls are made, have to be made in partnership with us on any change that might happen as far as having our own Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism. And I've talked to Scott White about it. I'm currently vice chair of the CVB, and one city has asked them to house the person who they pay for at the CVB for coordination. That's very different. They couldn't even take on all of our small business work if we asked them to currently. I mean, that needs to be based in Palm Springs and done in Palm Springs. And so I would be surprised, and council members will weigh in, if anyone thinks that should change. That's a commitment I have. I know it's a commitment the mayor has. That's, as he said, it's really important to us. As David explained, sort of the evaluation committee, and some people called it a selection committee, which it's not, right? This is the selection committee. We're the ones who are going to make the decision. The mayor and I were actually, I went to just say hi to all the people from the companies who were coming for the presentation when I saw it on the website, and I was told I had to leave because that could taint the process. So we were absolutely, and it's state law, excluded from every part of the process until we had that first meeting with the evaluation committee and then the interviews we wanted to get more information. So legally, there can't be a lot more in the staff report because it still would taint the bid process under state law if their proposals were shared publicly. So that's, we read them, but that was about it. And of course, we both watched the video, and I know some people here watched the video. I just want to answer just a couple other questions, but I do believe, by the way, and we've shared this with the city manager, both of us, that, lesson learned, the selection committee should have been broader. And that's why we had the stakeholder meeting, and we invited the other organizations, if they wanted to watch the videos and submit written reports, that we would have them in the staff report as well. Did you, I don't know, I assume you didn't receive any because we didn't get any, but we were very open to that. I do want to comment on the LGBT issue because it's out there. And, being probably the LGBT activist who's done this professionally, LGBT rights on the council, and have raised tens of millions of dollars to oppose and fight the organizations that the head of AEG has funded. I take that pretty strongly. I also know that as a city government, we can't consider that. People have a First Amendment right to their beliefs. We can't discriminate against people based on their political beliefs. And if we did, we would taint the process. So that's one thing. And two, if it was in reverse and a city was not giving a contract and saying we're doing it because they give to LGBT causes or any other cause, we'd be up in arms. So I just want to share that. As much as I despise those contributions, we really need not to look at that. And I do appreciate that issue. But I will say, in doing research, and yeah, there's a lot on social media, when you can look at the 100% corporate equality rating from the Human Rights Campaign, long-term giving transgender health insurance, the significant donations and working with communities. In the interviews, we had people who have been in long-term committed, now married, same-sex relationships, who have been in leadership at AEG. So, I'm going to do this in a legal way, which means taking his personal donations aside and look at what the company does, because I think that's what we have to do. But if it was me and him talking, and if I have that opportunity, I will share my views. I do want us, one of the things we did want to do here, and I appreciate Mr. Powell's comments, is look at what we want in a contract, and that's why we have our consultant. And I think to the extent legally we can do local preference and things along those lines, I want us to really make sure we're negotiating what we can to get that, regardless of what company it is. And then just sort of overall on this, as the mayor said, we're now in a different situation. I think we left the interviews, both of us leaning one way, then we talked, and it's a tough call. But we're now in a merger, and from our talks with the consultant, and I think it'll be helpful for council to hear, we could wait until 70, almost 80 convention centers all merge at the same time, and we're one of the smaller ones. Or we can make the decision now and get that done in a way where we're the focus and move forward in the most positive, proactive way we can. And so that really has a big impact on my thinking. And so one of the things I would like to ask our consultant before the rest of the comments is, what are the pluses and minuses of deciding now versus just staying month to month for 9 months until a merger happens? Because I think that'd be helpful for all of us.
Right. Well, at this point, there is no merger. Has not been approved. My understanding is we still have 2 firms, independent firms, that are interested in being awarded the contract. From a purely negotiating standpoint, if we're assisting you and there are 2 firms still in the running, there is that negotiating advantage or benefit that the city would have pre-merger. Once the merger is done, you simply have a negotiation with a single firm. So there's that nuts and bolts in terms of negotiations that I think is at least worthy of considering. The other thing that I note is the evaluation committee in November issued kind of their report that talked about their views in terms of the advantages of an AEG in terms of marketing and corporate presence, et cetera, implementing that sooner and negating a 6-month wait period where everything's kind of in limbo may be a benefit. On the other hand, you've got continuity. You could have a situation where you maintain the same firm through the next 6 months. There's a continuity benefit. But again, in terms of negotiations, in terms of actually implementing the direction that you want to go, it would, in my opinion, be a challenge to simply wait 6 months, this lame duck period that would be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think we were also concerned that if we keep SMG in a limbo state for several months, that we may lose some of the employees because they all feel insecure. So that's another factor that we really have to take into consideration. This is a very awkward situation. That's one reason we wanted to get you guys together, because Jeff and I have been talking about this, and there are bigger issues, and that's why we needed all of us together to talk about it. Councilmember Roberts?
Thank you. Always happy to join in the awkwardness of Palm Springs. I'm used to that my whole life. So, for me, our process is about process and policy. And so our job, from my perspective, is that we need to strip the politics out of something like this, because this becomes a business decision for Palm Springs. So I go to a more pragmatic place in my head with it. So to not ignore the politics of it completely, there's no question in my mind that the process was flawed. I don't think it was on purpose. I don't think that it was intentional in any way. And I don't think it was politically driven in any way, actually. The city moves fast because no matter how fast we move, we're considered that we move very slowly, and it's because nobody really understands, unless they're sitting here or there, how much the city has to process on a daily basis. And that this is one of thousands of contracts that we deal with on a regular basis. And that Dr. Reddy runs a huge number of departments with over 450 in staff. And that does not talk to all our relationships with the business community. So having said that, what I suspect happened here is Dr. Reddy went to the people he knows are most connected in the community. and who would probably be the best, considering their business experience, at evaluating a contract of this scale. Was there a mistake in there? Yeah, it should have included hot shops. It should have included others. So, you know, we're like anybody else. City's made up of people. We learn things, and I think that lesson is abundantly clear now. And in the future, we'll be better at that. So what are the next steps? We're here now. And so when I look at where we would go from here, it's for me pretty easy. If I thought that starting the entire process all over again, which is costly and time consuming, would bring us to a different place, I'd be very open to that. Or if I believed that bringing in a new group to evaluate would change the outcome that we have right now, I would be very supportive of it. But I don't. If we separate all the issues, an RFP was sent out to 4 organizations that the city felt were the quality, magnitude, and professionalism that we would consider. Only 2 responded. And now those 2 are merging. So I think we could go in a big circle, and it might be a feel-good moment, but the reality is, I don't think it'll change the outcome. We're here now. I also have to trust, very specifically with AEG and SMG, that these are 2 excellent companies. I think we're fortunate that they are the 2 that responded. So if we weren't sitting in a room like this and this process were just going on in the background for the contract on our pool, let's say, we would then look to our staff to start negotiating. And we have an amazing procurement department and staff, and they sit there all day long thinking about how to save us money. And they're really good at it. So, although AEG's president might have a history of giving to organizations that our city doesn't necessarily support, or that some of us don't support, if we start to go down that road, then I think we need to look at where anybody in their leadership gives money. And again, I think that that's a circular road. I don't think that that'll get us anywhere. Overall, AEG scores well in the areas that we care about, which is about equality. That's important to me. And it's certainly something that this council has agreed is a top priority. I've also learned that people that have done business with the city of Palm Springs or had interactions learn from us. And they might not like it initially, but they learn from us. Dollars talk. And so we're careful about how we spend our dollars. We send messages with the dollars. At this point, I think the best thing we can do is get the lesson about inclusiveness for our business community, and now leave it to our staff to start negotiating. I personally feel that by waiting, by sticking with SMG right now until the 2 merge, we take money off the table. I think my perspective is that we're in a better bargaining position right now while it's 2 companies. And we can potentially play off of one another. There's still 2 companies, there's still 2 staffs. So I think regardless of what happens, or if for some reason they decided not to merge, we in the meantime still need to negotiate in good faith with them and do what our staff does best, which is to get the work done and save us money. So that's my feeling, is that we need to just move forward now, get the lesson and move forward with these 2 companies, because that's what's left on the table. And I was going to make one more point, but I'm old and I've forgotten it, so I'll pass it off to my colleagues.
Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few notes and a few observations that I want to make. I want to start by saying that this has really been a very difficult process, and it's one that I think everyone has struggled with at different times for some emotional reasons, because we know so many of the people who are involved here and have such incredible respect for them. But one of my first observations is, as a former internal auditor, one of the questions that we were constantly asking of organizations is, how frequently have you bid your major projects? And the time when we would be most concerned that there was a regular bidding process is when there was a very, very close working relationship between organizations and the people who are providing services. And that failure to go out to bid certainly is very nice for it keeps the process quieter, it moves much faster, but it also invites a sense of that we've not really considered all of the competition that is out there. So I support fully the decision that the city manager made to go to bid on this project and make sure that we heard from everyone that was out there. Now, in that, we have all learned that we should have done a better job in setting up the initial evaluation committee, and that is a lesson that I don't think anyone in this room is going to forget. And we will find an opportunity to make up for what did not happen. I've had some personal experiences because of being very deeply involved in the Neighborhoods USA conference that's coming to Palm Springs next month. It's meant I've worked very closely with people from SMG and the Palm Springs Convention Center, as well as the Greater Palm Springs Convention and Visitors Bureau over the last 2 years. And it has been a fabulous partnership. There is simply, in my mind, no question to the dedication of the people that we worked with in both organizations. We have some folks who just incredibly give of themselves and their talent for our city. In moving forward, regardless of the organization that we go with, I think it is absolutely essential that the contract include provisions that ensure that our locally owned businesses are highlighted in providing services through this contract, and that we make certain that it is the locally owned businesses, be they retail stores, restaurants, or small hotels, are seeing the benefit of the growth in the convention center. I'm a old kid from Los Angeles, and I remember growing up in LA in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And the story was always, will LA ever have a downtown? And the answer was always no, it never will. And then on a big vacant lot that had sat absolutely empty near Olympic and Figueroa, an organization called AEG made an investment in building the Staples Center. Then they made an investment in building LA Live. And now every other day, I pick up a newspaper and some new city is trying to build the next LA Live. We have experience now in seeing what AEG can do in a neighborhood and in a community, and they have done it again here in the Coachella Valley with Golden Voice and the work that has happened for Coachella. I was up in Canada on vacation a couple of years ago. The young waitress asked where we were from. We said Palm Springs. She shook her head, saying, "Where is that?" And then we looked at her, and guessed her age and said, "It's near Coachella." And she started talking about the trip that she was going to take to Coachella. Now, it really hurt me that somebody knew Coachella before they knew Palm Springs, but that's the influence that we have. What I saw in the bid packages was an organization that looks like it has an opportunity to leverage their brands to create growth in our community and our conventions, and that's something that I want to see happen. Saying all of that, I think we critically need a unique Bureau of Tourism for Palm Springs. There are things different about our brand, and one of the things that's most important about that local Bureau of Tourism for our city is it serves very directly the small business owners that live and work within our community, and I simply do not want to lose that. The other thing I do not want to lose is the people and the talent and the commitment to community that I see in the staff that is at the Palm Springs Convention Center. So I want anything that we do to ensure that we have as many of the people who work there retained for Palm Springs as we possibly can. But I arrived here today not sure how I was going to ultimately decide. But after listening to everyone, after rereading the documents, I believe we have more leverage if we begin to work with the organization that will be the lead organization if this merger goes through, and that is AEG.
Thank you. Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my colleagues. A lot has been said. So I also came today not knowing which I would support or what I wanted to do. I make that decision based on the public testimony that I hear and what I hear from stakeholders. What I heard a lot is that complaints about the process being flawed. I agree that we needed to include more people. I don't think that that makes it flawed because the city council makes that decision based on the input from a consultant who is an expert in this field, who we hired to give us information about this process and the companies and the offers. Our excellent staff who does this work every single day, who is given information in the staff report and which you heard tonight. And public comment and stakeholders. So that's how we're making this decision. So respectfully to the selection committee who did excellent work, they made a recommendation to the subcommittee. And that is one, opinion that we heard in this process, and we're considering every single person's opinion. So I do think it's important as we move forward to include locally owned small hotels and businesses, and we've worked really hard. We have a standing business retention subcommittee meeting. What is that, every other month? I'm a little tired after going to midnight last night at our last city council meeting last night. Every other month we have an open meeting for businesses. And so I don't think it's true that we don't listen to small businesses and locally owned businesses. Those are the backbone of our economy. They're some of the most important stakeholders in our community. So if you felt like you weren't heard in this process, I apologize. I don't think that was the intention by anyone, and we won't do that again. But at the end of the day, the city council is making this decision based on a lot of different information. For me, I'm making an objective business decision for the city. I'm considering our brand, the revenue and the cost of the convention center to the city and to taxpayers, the success of the programs and the conventions and the vision for the future, and looking into the future about what the convention business will be in the next 5 to 10 years and longer, and how we can kind of grow our presence as a city within the region and connect connect with younger demographics, millennials, people who are driving the economy. So I care about the vision for the future, and I care about the employees who work in our city and at our convention center, and all of our local businesses and stakeholders. I agree that negotiating now with AEG, who is buying out and taking over SMG, is the best time to negotiate. I agree with Councilmember Roberts that we're in the best bargaining position now. I agree with Councilmember Middleton that we have more leverage now. As an attorney who negotiates for a living, I think that this is the best opportunity to do that. And I'm excited about AEG and what they can offer for our city. And I know SMG has done incredible work for our city for many decades. We know the people who are there. We love them. And this is a hard decision in some ways because it's personal for our community. And I think that's what we've heard tonight. And it's emotional. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to negotiate the best deal possible and look out for the city. I mean, at the end, now where we're at is because of the merger, it really makes very little difference. If that merger hadn't happened, we would be having a very difficult meeting tonight. And it still has been hard. I know it's hard for people, but it's happening regardless of what we do. And so our job in this is to manage the change and come out in the best way possible at the other side of it. And so for me to, and I heard from our consultant who said that there's risk in just waiting and doing nothing. Politically, the easiest thing is to do nothing and wait it out and let it happen, and then we don't have to vote and make that decision because we're going to alienate or make some people upset in the community. But I think the best business decision and governance decision for the city is actually to act now so that we do have leverage and we can make this decision and get a good deal and not have 6 months where we might have stall in our operations or our management or problems in the merger. I don't want to merge with 70 other convention centers. We say we're like no place else. We always act like it. We want to be like no place else, and we want to get a deal for Palm Springs and a good one, and not just go along with the flow at someone else's pace when that happens. So for all of those reasons, I think that we should negotiate the best deal that we can get, and I'm excited about looking at AEG.
Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor. I remembered what I was going to say. So I very simply wanted to also throw my support on Palm Springs maintaining an independent Bureau of Tourism. I think that we are unique, and I think that our branding is unique. And I haven't yet been convinced of the benefits that we would gain by combining. I very much understand how others would benefit. I just don't see how we would benefit. And our branding is truly unique. And I know the Valley in general benefits from our brand, and it's our job to keep that brand as strong as we can keep it and also keep it as inclusive for the entire Valley. But I think in order to do that, we need a very, very tight and close relationship with our Bureau. And I think the only way we can do it is if we control it. The only other thing, as I'm listening to my colleagues, is I just want to differentiate myself in one area from when I spoke earlier. We are privy to information up here that we can't share publicly right now about the differences between the bids between SMG and AEG. So I'm not picking a company right now for the city to negotiate with because I think we should be negotiating with the company that is offering us the best contract right now. We need to start there. And ultimately, that's going to be moot when they merge anyway. So I'm leaving that to the negotiators to figure out and work out. In this case, that negotiator is not me. So I will see the recommendation from our staff on that and our subcommittee on that before I make that decision. But I actually feel, this has been described as an awkward process, but I actually feel very fortunate in the way that it's come down. I think we got very lucky with the way we handled it. And obviously, the one mistake we made was not being as inclusive as we are in most other areas of our city. Since we're always striving for inclusiveness, we can always get better at it. That's all.
Dr. Reddy, you have any further comments?
Well, I would just note that we also have a closed session scheduled you can adjourn into, because that's where you can have the discussion on the price and terms of the lease. So if you want to talk about the actual numbers of both proposals and give me direction from closed session to negotiate, that's one option. You could give me direction from here. But again, those are choices that you can make either here if you have enough information, or if you need more information on the proposals, you can adjourn into closed session and we can have that discussion there.
I think it'd be a very short closed session, but probably it would be, I don't think we should pass it up. Okay, so.
Sorry, if I can, just to be clear, we are required to, by law, only discuss those terms in closed session. So that's why we have to recess.
At this point. Now,
Right.
it certainly will be public when a contract comes, but at this point, we're still in that negotiation process.
Thank you.
Good point. It's not our decision. It's a legal requirement. Okay, so one thing I'd like to say before we adjourn to closed session is really, Dr. Reddy, I really appreciate, we had 8-hour council meeting last night, which was a lot of work for your staff and for my fellow council members. It was a lot of time last night. Thank you for coming together tonight, because as you can see, why Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Corrs and I needed all of us in a discussion, because this has just got too complicated. We couldn't really make a recommendation to you without having us all together. And thank you to members of the public who came out tonight and
Mayor,
shared your time with and your
if I could,
opinions with
just
us.
for clarification for everyone in the audience, we'll be adjourning into closed session. Is there an expectation we would come back out after and continue this meeting? Or the direction you would give me would be then you would have for a following meeting?
Well, the agenda says we come back out here and report out of closed session.
We could report out, but if there's an expectation that you will then continue deliberating and direct, I just want to make sure that there's no expectation of that from the audience unless that's what council's intent is. I don't believe it is.
Well, my question before we respond to that is, what is our goal? If we don't do that, if we go into closed session, we make a decision about which company and terms, if we don't do it tonight, would we then do it at the next council meeting? And does that lose anything for our negotiation?
Well, for example, in closed session, you're looking at both. You could direct staff to get additional information from both companies and bring back clarifying additional information that you would then make as a decision, and then give me direction, staff direction, to go negotiate with one or the other.
Or conceivably, you could hear information in closed session that would make you want to come out here and have further deliberation. So it's really whether you think you're going to make a decision out in open session tonight or not.
And we would have our consultant available in closed session.
Correct.
With us. Okay.
So if after we talk more on terms, if people need that, I think the mayor and I may know more, but I think everyone's seen stuff. If we want to give direction on what to do, that needs to be back out here, is what you're saying. Okay, so the question is, do people need closed session before they want to give direction and then talk about terms? Or do we want to, I'm fine either way.
I'll just say from my standpoint, I'm based on, since we've already been given the background on where we are with these proposals, I'm prepared to give direction based on what my colleagues have to say as well. So I'm fine to do it here unless there's new information. I think we've already been pretty much prepped for this, right? So I would suggest we do it now if any of us want to go into closed session, I would support that.
But absent that, I'd rather do it here in public now while people are here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unless anyone needs to talk to legal counsel or get more information on what we've seen, we don't need to, right?
If we do that, Dr. Reddy, will we now be in a position that we can reveal what we know about these two contracts? That could not happen now. Okay. Thank you.
Not
Because we may be just directing you to go into more negotiations.
correct. Those negotiations with one party may fail, and we end up.
But we can't
negotiating.
express why.
Right.
Right? That's the fine line here? Okay. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Reddy,
to
you're right.
just to clarify, at this point in time, we have not yet been given direction, which is what we're seeking, to negotiate with either firm. So we have gone through this entire process, seeking the full council's direction as to whether or not you want us to start and enter. We will bring the agreement back. You have to still approve the agreement, go through that whole process. But we need direction as staff as to whether or not to enter into negotiations with AEG or SMG.
What
or
else do you
neither.
need, Craig, beyond that?
That's all we really need. Obviously, in terms and conditions, we can talk about that in closed session or at another, as far as
Okay,
the
so you're-
specifics of the
You're just
content
looking
of
to
the
lock
contract.
down on one of them.
Right.
Councilor Middleton?
Seems to me the direction that we need to give staff this evening is very small, and that is, are we prepared to ask them to begin negotiations with one firm or another? And that's the kind of decision that should be made in front of the public.
Do we need any more information before we make that
Just-
decision?
Just to be clear, because I heard this from Councilmember Roberts, so we have to pick one firm or the other, or you said neither, or is it both? Not both, only one or the other, or neither? Is that right?
Well, let Jeff also, we're not
One-
trying to,
One or the other, or neither.
right.
One or the other, or neither?
And if it's neither, then we would continue on a month-to-month as we are now with SMG.
Thank you. That helps.
And we can make a motion to proceed. All right.
And if I can ask, so the amendments that I heard, or the direction that I heard about, which I agree with, about a local preference or other types of initiatives like that, that would just be in negotiating, and we don't need to include that in any motion.
So some of the terms and conditions, and remember, there's legal issues with enforcing and specifically separating out one contract to suddenly have local preference that is not applied across all contracts for the city. So you can encourage, and we can talk about that and bring back terms, but to enforce it on just one agreement, when it's not an ordinance to do that to all contracts, we have to be careful of that, and that's where Jeffrey would come involved, to give you guidance as to what degree we can do that. We have to be careful on that.
Thank you. Thought first you meant the mayor pro tem. You're asking him for legal advice. We have two Jeffs now. Okay, and then just to be clear, because I heard from my colleagues as well as the community about keeping the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism, is this involved in that, in the negotiations or the contract that's going to come before the council?
Well, how that will work is that's a pass-through, so our requirement on either vendor would be that they would continue that pass-through arrangement.
Can you explain what that means?
So what that is the city pays for the full operational costs. It's just managed by that company. Yes, our tourism bureau is managed by that company as a private third party, but we pay all the expenses. So it becomes a pass-through. And it's included in their fee for the convention center. They don't charge us extra.
So if we choose to negotiate with AEG and they were to be selected at the end of negotiations, the pass-through would continue as it's written under AEG.
That's
for
correct.
the public.
And the direction is, as we hear it, is that we want to maintain the status quo in our tourism bureau as it is today, and to keep the employees there to every possible extent.
Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts, did you want to speak again? Okay. Quick question. This is sort of an unusual for us to have this kind of study session. We don't do it very often. Mr. Mejia, can we vote at this study session or just give a consensus?
Well, my understanding of the rules of procedure says that you won't take motions, but in this case, you could just provide direction.
So we can just state a consensus. Okay, so do we have a consensus that we want to work on a contract, negotiate a contract with the AEG at this time in order to get the best deal possible?
based on what I've heard from our subcommittee in those interviews, that AEG would be my first choice for negotiation. And again, in the end, it's probably going to be moot, but we need to start someplace. So I would support the subcommittee's recommendation on this.
That's our recommendation.
Yeah.
I would as well.
Okay. Do you need any more direction, Dr. Reddy?
No, thank you.
Okay, do we have any more business? So we don't need closed session. Okay, with that, again, thank you, everybody, and we are adjourned until our next meeting on May the 1st. May Day.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And where is it? And where will they?
LA.
And they will stay there? So SMG will probably.
Yeah, that's how they're
block.
splitting.
Okay, so it makes perfect sense that we keep them.
Yeah.
Unless-
I thought I was just thinking. No, yeah. But for me to say, if it's pretty, it's JR. If it's gay, it's right.
So he's throwing himself down on his pink card.
Exactly.
And